Greeting Pips! I'm Tonya Wasinyeho, and I will be glad if you call me by my second name, Rose. This video's content will be all about communication breakdown. But first, let me have a brief explanation of what communication is. Communication is simply the act of transferring information from one place, person, or group to another. It is a two-way process where there is a sender, a message, and a receiver. Let me give you an example of communication. Hello. Ate, why exactly did you call? Oh, I forgot about my wallet. Can you bring it to my office? Oh, sure. Don't worry about it. I send it to you. Okay, thanks. Bye. Okay, bye. Well, I guess you already have idea of what communication is, or you already know what's communication. Let's move on to our main topic. Communication breakdown. What's communication breakdown? Oh, this occur when problem in any of those elements such as the sender, the message, the receiver, and the feedback arise. It occurs when there is a wrong perception by the receiver or wrong interpretation. Let me give you an example of communication breakdown. Aling Alice is busy washing her family's clothes, so she decided to ask her daughter to clean the living room. But sadly, her daughter is using earphones, so she cannot hear her. So that is a communication breakdown. Why? Because the message is not understood by the receiver, and the receiver is obviously using her earphone, so she did not understand anything. The situation I gave you is an example of communication breakdown. Actually, this breakdown happens because of a barrier, and there are four barriers to communication, and let me talk about the first one. The first barrier to communication is physical barriers or physiological barriers. These are the natural or environmental conditions that act as a barrier in communication in sending a message from the sender to receiver. Let me give you an example of it. First example is the sound of those chickens. Second example is the sound of this electric fan. Third example could be the sound of a vehicle passing a road, but I cannot give you an example of that because I don't live near a national roadway. Now let's talk about the second barriers to communication. The second one is psychological barriers. These are called as mental barriers. These refer to social and personal issues of a speaker towards communicating with others. Let me give you an example of it. Like trauma, fear, or lack of confidence. Like for example, a student being shy to answer his or her answer in front of the class or talk in front of the class because of lack of confidence. The third barrier to communication is cultural barriers. This pertains to communication problem facing or encountered by people regarding their intrinsic values, beliefs, and traditions. Example would be an American talking to Filipino. They cannot talk about Halloween because most likely Americans celebrate Halloween with parties and trick or treats, but most of the Filipino mourn the deaths of their loved ones. And the last one, the fourth one, the linguistic barriers. These pertain conflicts with regard to language and word meanings, such as different in language, accent, dialect, or speech defects. An example would be me talking to a Korean. I cannot understand them because they have different language compared to mine. Those four barriers to communication that I mentioned are something that we experience every day, like physical barriers or physiological barriers that we can already hear outside. So after talking about barriers to communication, let's talk about the three classification of noises that Verdeber defined. The first is external noise, and from the word itself, we can already have idea of it. These are the sight, sound, and other stimuli that draw people's attention away. For example, noise from vehicle, dog barking, or sound of airplane, and also the sound of chickens. The second one is the internal noise. And from the word itself again, internal, inside of us, these are the thoughts, feelings that interfere with meaning. An example of internal noises is confrontation with a friend, racial prejudice, or fear of speaking in front of the class. The last one, or the third one, is semantic noises. These are the alternate meanings aroused by speaker symbols. This idea means that a word may have another meaning in the minds of other students. For example, incorrect grammar, using excessive technical jargon, and using idiomatic expression. And yeah, those are the topic and the subtopic of communication breakdown. I hope you learned something from it, and I hope you learned something from me. And we must keep in mind how important communication is to us in our everyday life. And also keep in mind the different barriers to communication, such as the physical, the psychological, cultural, and linguistic. Let's also keep in mind the three kinds of noises, which are the external, internal, and semantic noises. That's all for this video, and it's me, Rose, saying goodbye. Peace out.